William Shakespeare said, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." Of course, we can see that this is true as the world of a whole, but it is also true on the level of a company. Each individual has a specific role that they are called to play. As supervisors, it is your responsibility to direct, coordinate, choreograph, and most especially inspire your cast members. Of course, these responsibilities become more difficult when your cast is in need of correction. What do you do when a cast member is forgetting their lines, making missteps, or even missing rehearsal? We are pleased to present the acts of cast correction, encouraging your players' best performances. Abilities as a supervisor that you need to be aware of is to set the stage. Theater location is especially important in theater, and it is also important when it comes to correcting your cast. Where you decide to do it is important. You want to pick a setting that is quiet, that is free of interruptions for you and for your employee, and ultimately a place that will give your employee the opportunity to reflect and respond mentally to the things that you talk about. It is also important to note showtime. You want to pick a time when you're not going to be rushed and when they have the opportunity to sit down and delve into the problem with you. It is important to note that cast correction is not for center stage. Act 1 is all about problem solving with your employee. Scene 1, speak to your lead. It's important for you to remember that at one time you saw this person as the absolute most qualified candidate for the job. You reviewed their resume, you called their references, and you chose them to be your lead. It's especially important to remember that when they're not performing to the best of their ability. You also need to remember that 95% of employees are responsible adults. They want to fix the problems. They want to improve their personal performance. Apathetic actors are the exception. If you come to them with a problem at hand, most likely they will respond in a way that is positive and towards reaching results. Scene 2 is to look for underlying causes for the reasons of these problems. You've opened up a dialogue, you're conversing adult to adult, and now it's important for you to look for things below the surface of your employee that might be causing problems. They might be experiencing problems at home. They might have negative work relationships that make things stressful. They could be dealing with sickness on their part or on the part of a family member. And they might have a general lack of motivation. Now, these are not excuses for the behaviors that they exhibit, but they are important for you to know, and especially for you to have empathy for these situations. And if you show that, if you first and foremost show concern for the employee, they're even more likely to want to help you and themselves in correcting whatever needs to be fixed in their performance. Scene 3, it's important to stick to the script. As an employer, it becomes easy to use belittling, patronizing, or even down-talking sorts of language. And these are things that need to be avoided at all costs. There is no faster way for you to make an enemy of your employee than by talking down to them. Act 2 is all about the love story. It's about the praise that you give your employee. Give good reviews along with the corrections that you're offering. Who here has heard of the 5 languages of love? These essentially depict 5 different ways in which people communicate and feel love. One of them is called words of affirmation. This is verbal praise, like saying thank you. You did an amazing job. We appreciate your effort. You are fantastic at planning. These kinds of positive verbal praises that we give people. Who here is a words of affirmation person? I'm not, but good for you. So it's important, along with the corrections that we're offering, that they hear, you have improved so much since being here. You are hardworking. We appreciate all of your effort. You have a great eye for detail. I wouldn't have caught something in a similar situation. Seem a little confusing of how to offer a compliment and a criticism, a critique at the same time. So I wanted to give this example. It's just short, and this is in reference to a personal relationship, but I think it has business implications as well. Okay, I want everyone to turn to the person next to them and give them a compliment sandwich. Don't include a real problem that you have with them, but just kind of role play what we saw in the previous scene. And one last scene note, public praise is encouraged. We talked about giving critiques, and you do want to do that in the privacy of an office, of not a public space. But if you're willing to be vulnerable as a supervisor and verbally acknowledge in front of a group the things that an individual is doing well, you're going to be seen as praiseworthy by them in the long run as well. Act 3. Now this is where we really get into the juicy part of the plot, the actual correcting. Scene 1 is to make specific corrections. Louisa May Alcott, who is an artist of a different kind, said, "I like good, strong words that mean something." More often than not, we tend to rely on weak, misinterpretable language. And the problem with this is essentially that, is that someone can take it the wrong way. You might go into a meeting thinking that you corrected someone and that there should be no excuse for them to repeat that behavior in the future, whereas they might just have heard a suggestion from you. So I want to we'll call it a run through. Suppose you'd say, "I'd like you to think about your current performance and how you can improve." What is the kind of feedback that you're going to get from a cast member or an employee? Nothing. You might never hear from them ever again. You didn't give them anything specific. They could probably think of 1,000 things they can work on. How are we to know that they pick the one thing you want them to work on? Instead, we need to use this language. "I've noticed that you seem to be struggling with following up on your projects. I would like you to make a concerted effort to contact those involved and make sure they were satisfied. And I expect you to do that consistently from now on." There's a lot of bold, straightforward language in there, and the great thing about that is it means there is very little room for misinterpretation. Plan of action. As a supervisor, you are in a position of power where you can influence directly your cast members' behaviors. And one of the best way to do that is to sit down and make a plan of action ahead of time of what they will do and how they will respond in certain situations. First, you need to remember that you are co-problem solvers. Sometimes it's easy to see your employee as the problem, but the problem is their behavior and the underlying reasons for it. So together, when you sit down and make a plan of action, you can both address those and come to a conclusion that is helpful for both of you. Specifically describe any new processes that you come up with. If you're going to do a weekly review with them by email, talk about the details of that, the timeline, and the specifics that will go behind it. Lastly, and especially this is important for disciplinary correction, is to determine exactly what will happen next time. Suppose you have an employee who is prone to angry outbursts. You can sit down with them and say, "Okay, next time the printer is not cooperating, how will you respond rather than breaking the printer?" It seems a little bit silly, but having a written out plan of action can be really helpful to help people as far as redirecting their energy and correcting the things that you want to see corrected as well. So the end scene. You've gone through, you have set the stage, you problem solved, you collaborated, you had an open dialogue, giving correction and compliments. What are the results that you can expect to see from this? Well, from the studies that we have seen, this is what you can expect. a healthy working relationship with your employees, increased respect of your cast members, the increased likelihood of seeing specific desired results, and ultimately a stunning performance on your part, on the part of your employees, and on the part of your company as a whole. That being said, I hope you can take these notes, apply them in your supervising, in your directing, in your choreographing. Break a leg.